Hello, everyone. This is Melanie from Melanie B's Creative Studio and Supplies. And today we're going to talk about something that I hope will clear the air, give you lots of information about brushes, cleaning systems, how to take care of your synthetic detail brushes, and just provide you with lots of tips, tricks, and care instructions for the investment of those precious brushes in your art stash. So obviously, I'm going to be using my own products for demonstrating because why wouldn't I? It wasn't long ago, I had a comment from a troll on one of my videos who basically just posted promo SM, which means you promote yourself so much. Well, excuse my terminology when I say no shit Sherlock, because this is my job. Why would I not promote my own products? And when I have spent years creating products that are predominantly for the paint by number community to help us keep our hobby as frustration free as possible, then of course I'm going to promote them when I know they're the best on the market for this particular hobby. Now, these products are not just for paint by number. And the cleaning system that I designed helps to maintain my brushes or anybody else's as well. I want to talk about any synthetic detail brushes that you may have or that you may purchase. So for just a minute, let's talk about why we need synthetic brushes over natural hair brushes to begin with when we're working with acrylic paint. Everybody believes that you're supposed to have natural hair brushes and like that's something better. For the type of acrylic painting we are doing with paint by numbers, modeling, and ceramics, that kind of thing, we don't need natural hair paintbrushes. It's just not necessary. So there's no point in going to that extra expense for those types of bristles when you don't need them. That's why I use synthetic hair in my paintbrushes. It also helps me to keep the costs down. And synthetic brushes are known to be the most durable, the most robust, and the most reliable. I call my brushes custom because I did all this research before I ever started designing them. And I tested 7 different types of bristles. I purchased, over the years, hundreds of different paintbrushes. And that's how I determined which type of bristle I wanted to use for my brushes. The ones that frayed the least were the ones that I selected. Right now, what I want to do is give you lots of valuable tips and tricks for maintaining those precious brushes and your investment. In my 3-in-1 brush cleaning system, I call step 1 the prevention step, which is the rinsing of the paintbrush. To a lot of people, this just seems like kind of an obvious step. There are quite a few tips that I need to give you for the rinsing process. This is where the most damage can occur. This is where you're going to see fraying, curling, bending. So this is the part I want you to pay most attention to. This is my 10/0 pudgy brush, which is one of my tiniest little detail brushes. Brushes like this can be the most difficult to maintain. The first topic I want to address is how to avoid curling bristles. So there are a few bad habits that will adversely affect the bristles on your brush. So my very first rule is never, ever, for any length of time, leave your brush down in your water cup. So I'm just going to pull my 2/0 spotter brush. And you can see that this has a very, detailed point on it. But if you notice, when I put it down in this water cup, even if I just sit it there for a minute, do you see how the point of my brush is bending? And I go run to the restroom, and I'm only gone a minute. But I do this every single time I'm switching out paint pots. I'm going and making some lunch. I'm doing multiple things, right? How long do you think it takes before my bristles stay this way? Now, I do have quite a bit of water in this cup, but the water is going above the ferrule. on my brush. This is a painted handle and it has lots of layers of paint, which is one of the things that I specified when I did my custom paintbrushes. But if the water gets down between the wood and the ferrule, and it does that over time, especially if I'm leaving this in this paint water, how long do you think that that is going to stay on there? So when I designed my paintbrushes, I made sure that they were crimped here twice to make sure that the ferrule and the wood would stay intact. And they're also glued. But a lot of paintbrushes will only have glue between the wood and the ferrule, which means water gets in there, it's going to release that glue over time. So the crimping here for me was just triple guarantee that my brushes would not separate from the wood to the ferrule. But you still don't want to leave it in the water because you don't want that water down there between the two. Synthetic bristles can be made of nylon, polyester, or a combination of both. Some synthetic brushes are made of lycra, spandex, or rayon. So let's consider if you had any clothing made of those materials. The wash care instructions on every one of those pieces of clothing would say, wash in cool water. So this tip is so important, and this is one that a lot of people don't know. When you're rinsing your synthetic paintbrushes, it is imperative to be careful of the temperature of the water. This water needs to be cool. I think understanding what they're made of really can help you understand how to take care of them and to prevent that curling. So just imagine those poor little bristles screaming out, "I'm melting, melting," every time they hit that warm or hot water and curling up. And that'll help you remember this tip and to check the temperature of that water before you dip those poor little helpless brushes down in there. So another really important step when it comes to our rinsing is making sure you're getting all of the paint out of the bristles. When you have acrylic paint that gets down here in this portion of your bristles and it doesn't get rinsed out completely, it's going to spread those bristles apart like this. As it dries, it's going to keep them there. The next time you come back to your paintbrushes are going to be kind of like, eh. That's why I ended up creating my own like brush cleaning system to help you guys, no matter whether you use my brushes or somebody else's brushes, to maintain your brushes as you're working, but also when you're done. And these are handmade. I designed this 3-in-1 brush cleaning system so that it's really compact, and again, I'm going to explain how to use this. But anyway, so the step one in this system is in the lid. You drop this down into your rinse cup. That's what's down in there. And then the rest of the system is here, which we'll go through in a minute. It may take you a little bit of time to get into what I call muscle memory, where you just get into a habit of doing these steps. But I promise you it will be worth it if you want to maintain your brushes and keep them in great condition. So when I first started with Paint by Number, I had found this great little tool called the Paint Puck. This suction cups into the bottom of your water cup. I did use this for years. The only problem with this is that the nodules on this paint puck are perfect for large brushes, but they're not great for little tiny detail brushes. You can see here, when you're trying to clean in between those little bristles, it's almost impossible with the paint puck. So when I created my 3-in-1 brush cleaning system, I wanted to use this scrubber that had the tiny little nodules. You can see while the paintbrush is wet, how it gets in between those bristles and it really gets the paint out before that paint dries, which is super important. That's why I called this step in my 3-step system prevention, because this little scrubbing disc will prevent that paint from drying in your bristles and ultimately can help prevent fraying. In step 1, we were preventing damage from happening. But in step 2, we want to preserve the shape of the brush. Several years ago, someone told me that using cosmetic wipes instead of baby wipes was the key to keeping your brushes in pristine condition. And that was a game changer for me. So when I developed the 3-in-1 brush cleaning first aid kit, it was imperative that I included something that replicated the cosmetic wipe as closely as possible. The ones that I had been using were the pharmacy wipes. They seemed to be perfect for making sure that my brushes were reshaped in a perfect point. But I also wanted to make sure that we weren't putting anything back into the environment. So I had custom bamboo cotton pads made that would fit down in this little container so that you could travel with them and all that. And then I made the preservation solution to go with it, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that makes it just like using a cosmetic wipe, except they aren't disposable. Everything is reusable and washable. And one thing else I want to point out is I'm not using these kind of containers anymore for the preservation solution because there was an issue with people pulling out that little nozzle and the solution leaking. I'm using a different kind of bottle. But you'll notice you don't use a lot of the solution. I've been using this same bottle for the last 3 years, so you don't use much. So tucked down in this little part of the compartment are 3 bamboo pads that are washable and reusable. You can tell mine have been used, but if you're rinsing properly, in step 1, you will not see much of anything on these pads. The other thing that you'll find in this little compartment is a little plastic disc that you can use to set your bamboo pad on after you've spritzed it. I've already taken my little disc out and I left it sitting on my other workspace. I like to get my pad wet with some clean water, and then I will spritz my solution on top of it. This helps that solution go further and the pad stay wet a little bit longer. I'm working on top of a glass mat, so I can put this on my surface and not worry about it damaging this. So just imagine I'm over here and I'm painting, and as I paint, I need to clean my brush. I'm going to dip down in here and I'm going to scrub my brush gently across this little rubber scrubber. Then I'm going to take my brush after I rinse every single time, and I'm going to pull it across this bamboo pad that is prepped with the preservation solution. That's going to reshape the bristles of my brush. It conditions. So when I put this little bit of solution and reshape my bristles, then I go back to my next color and I start painting again. After I finish painting for the day and I've rinsed my brush at the end of the day, I'm going to reshape my bristles. I do this after every single time I rinse, and I do it when I'm done for the day. By then, my bamboo pad is fairly dry, or I make sure that it's dry. I put it back in that little container. Everything is stored neatly. Now we've gotten to step 3, which is the final step in our cleaning process. In my system, I have the soap housed in the bottom of this container to make it really easy and portable, like I was mentioning before. There's 2 ounces of soap. I've been using the same one for 3 years. Really, this is not about cleaning your brushes. This is about protecting the bristles until your next painting session. And yes, this soap will clean. It has all the ingredients to clean your brushes beautifully. But by the time you've reached this step, they're probably not dirty at all. They probably have no paint left in them. So what we want to do is lock our bristles into place to protect them from any damage that might happen while they're sitting in a paintbrush cup or while we travel. I invented the recipe. I hand pour this soap. I hand stamp this design. Like every single thing about this kit is handmade. I have proprietary ingredients in this so that it doesn't just clean, but it also protects. So let's talk about how you use my particular soap. I don't saturate this in a sink. I take some distilled water out of a dropper bottle or something, and I drop a tiny bit of water on the top of this soap. Then I'm going to take my paintbrush that has been run across my bamboo pad after it's been rinsed. So all I have to do is take my paintbrush and wipe it across the top of this wet soap. Then I will take the excess soap that is around the ferrule right there and pull it across my bristles until I have shaped them with my fingertips. This process is very quick. Once I have those bristles exactly in the position that they need to be in, I will set this brush aside, let that air dry, and those bristles are locked into place. And then when I'm ready to use this brush again, all I have to do is rinse that soap off and it's ready to go. That's it. This literally takes me 30 seconds. As small as these tiny little brushes are, those points will stay in place once it has dried, and they are locked. This brush has dried already, and you can see how tight and stiff these bristles are. I can touch it and it's not moving. They're just locked into place. That means that the humidity is not getting to them. They're not frizzy. If I try to bend these bristles, they'll bend kind of all together. But overall, it is protected from environmental factors. If you use another brand of soap, be sure that it is a paintbrush soap and not like a kitchen soap or a body soap, because some of those can be very drying on your bristles, especially synthetic bristles. One more little tip I want to give you. I'm the worst about this as far as do as I say, not as I do. I'm so bad about using my flat brushes as a chisel tip and going sideways like this on a textured gesso surface. And so I'll go like this, right? And I use these little tiny strokes and draw my line and do whatever in little small areas. This is what happens. I don't care whose brush you use, you're gonna see this. Do you see how they're kind of going outward, like splaying out? That is because I'm doing that with these flat brushes. Shame, shame, shame on me. That's when I should be using one of these brushes here instead and going into those small areas and lining, because that's what they're made for and that's not what this is made for. Because I use textured gesso, going sideways is pulling against this tip. So I left this alone without doing anything to fix it, just to show you. Those of us who know what they're supposed to do and not do still make the same mistakes. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and just rinse it. The last thing I'll try is, putting it in boiling water and trying to fix it. You don't want to dip into the preservation solution. You just want to spritz it. And if you dip into it, you're misusing it. Okay, so you see how it is just completely flat and into a point. So now that it's like that, I'm going to put it on my soap. I'm going to freeze it into place. So the next time I come back, it should be that way. All else fails, I will put this in boiling water, repeat these steps, and it should be okay. You see it's perfectly flat right now. I just shouldn't do it to begin with, to be honest. I don't want to have to restore and reshape brushes. I prefer to do things right to begin with. Well, everyone, I hope you found these tips and tricks for brush care to be helpful. No matter which brushes you use or which brush cleaning system you decide to use, I just want to make sure that you're able to maintain your synthetic brushes and detail brushes in the proper way. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, comment, and share. Thanks as always for joining me today, and I'll see you back soon.